Welcome. I'm folding this hand, and then I'm giving my intro. It's Pot Limit Omaha, day number 31 of this journey that I am on. That like almost rhymes, but it doesn't quite. Right. My hand was garbage. I folded. My hand is garbage. I folded. That's like a lot of the story of playing poker. That's not heads up poker. Oh, my hand is garbage. I folded. All right, this player raised two hands when we sat down, and then they limped the third. So I'm going to say they probably like to play a lot of hands. And that's just my early read. So that's the only player who's full stacked. Then I have three players with these kind of partial stacks, which is usually a good sign. We don't want to read too much into that. It certainly doesn't mean for certain. I was going to say for certain, and I was going to say for sure. There's no guarantee that they are, bad players by any means, but it shifts the probability, shifts the spectrum of players, or the likelihood of each spot on the spectrum, something like that they can have. The Ethical Panda says, morning and welcome. Morning, Panda. Morning. I will henceforth refer to the Ethical Panda as Panda unless some more pandas come in, and then it'll get confusing, and then I don't know, figure it out. I like that Royal Blood song, Figure It Out, right? Or is it Blood Royal? I think it's Royal Blood, but for some reason I thought it was Blood Royal, and that got stuck in my head. It sounds like a cooler name to me. I don't know. I didn't really know them until I saw the Entourage movie, which, yeah, I saw the Entourage movie. The button has limped here. Okay, we will mark them as an open limper. And similarly, another two-piece that I found, which I'm sure everybody had heard before, 21 Pilots, like from Suicide Squad. They, I like the songs. I like the songs that they chose to put in the movies. This two-piece thing is becoming more of a thing, right? I mean, I guess the White Stripes were an early successful two-piece, but I think the bass with some high end and some tracks. I mean, tracks. Everybody's got tracks now, right? So it's like it doesn't really matter how many pieces you have. You just decide, and then you just play tracks, and you get a really big sound. Buffy Bots says, good morning. Good morning to you as well. Okay, I guess I already said morning, so now I'm saying morning again, but, whatever. Morning. Ace 8 6 deuce. The deuce isn't very good. It doesn't combine that well with the 6. I mean, it negates its connectivity to the ace, right? Because 3 4 5 makes the same straights. 6 and 8 connect. And I would defend this against a small blind RFI, but not against the cutoff. So far we're having a, kind of a slow morning, right? In terms of not a lot of hands of interest. 10s with a jack and a 7. I'm going to raise this against this player. This might be a little sort of, I don't know, poker promiscuous. Okay, top pair, gut shot, straight draw, blocker to the flush draw. In position, I'm betting this hand. Out of position, I'm going to check. I feel like they might pot here a lot. Like people do that, right? It's something that I feel like I see a lot of. And I need to start putting some check raises in my range. This isn't going to be one of them. I kind of hate folding this hand heads up, but I'm going to do it because it's just going to be really difficult to play it well on future streets. An important thing to note is that should a 9 come, I would make a straight, which would be the nut straight with 10-7 if the jack weren't on board, but with, I can play this. I can barely play this. Right, 3 Broadway cards single suited. I can play on the button. I think that is a heuristic that we have developed. I've got it in my brain anyway. I hope it's correct. The Ethical Panda says, Ich bin ein Panda. Which, okay, yeah, cool. You are. I have a gut shot. I have middle pair. I have a club blocker. I have a fold. This player seems to be liking to bet post flop, which is cool. We're gonna try not to sort of outthink ourselves and like get it in too light against them, but maybe have an idea like there's a pretty good chance that if we check, they're going to stab. So maybe when we flop huge against them, we go for some more check raises, right? That might be an exploit. Um, it can mean calling down a little lighter, but I think that's maybe I want a little bit more of a read to do that. So what is going on in this hand? Our garbage made good, it appears. They checked back threes. Okay, fine. I think they bet the flop, right? What was pre-flop? Probably a raise and a call. I'm going to, we'll pop up the hand replayer for a moment. We'll just see if we can get any information. There's a raise and a cold call, right? And then a C bet and a call. And they had a flush draw, right? They both had a flush draw. Let's just see that showdown. No, just one flush draw. All right, the ace high bet, I'd say pretty light, but the ace is a good blocker to have if you want to go bluffing there. You want your opponent to not have the nut flush draw, so having the nut flush draw blocker is helpful. All right, I have a gut shot here. 6-3 of 5 will make me the nuts, unless it is a 5 of hearts. I have an itty bitty polka dot flush draw with a 3 and a 2. The lowest possible flush draw under any circumstances. And then I have a jack that's also in my hand. This is the sort of thing where it's like, you know, I was talking to a student about spots where, you know, you have hands that maybe are a little bit like this in some ways, where they're going to be difficult to play out of position, but they might have a good amount of equity. This would be sort of towards the bottom of that range because it's the tiniest flush draw, not like a nut flush draw or something. But the SPR, there was like $4 in the middle, and there were, you know, 70 whatever back or $80 back. So we had a like 20 plus SPR. So in those spots, playability is going to be paramount. Whereas in spots with a very low SPR, then that equity becomes much, much more important. Ends up being the key factor. This is probably overlimpable. In fact, I'm going to do that. I had been mostly staying out of trouble in spots like this. So the things that make me conflicted are this player behind me has been pretty aggressive post-flop. Although that might have just been a very small number of hands that my inclination towards that read is kind of fading. Ace came, king queen made the nuts, you know, ace whatever, got there. A jack or a 10 might be a little more vulnerable to getting bluffed. I picked up a gut shot, which would not be to the nuts. I have a 7 high flush. There's been no betting so far, so I think there's a reasonable chance my 7 high flush is good. I'm just going to check. I could bet like $1 to try to get called by a straight, and I think I'm going to win here for sure after this checks through. But yeah, thinking my opponent had maybe shown some aggression. What? They decided to show 2-3. Okay. That's cool. Thanks for the show. Yeah. If this king were a queen, a jack, a 10, I would definitely raise this hand. If I were suited to the king, I might raise this hand. I think as is, I'm going to go ahead and fold. And then I will mark this for a little pre-flop review. And I don't really have a good source of like what to do in the small blind when there are limpers, because we don't run sims for these things. I mean, we can. That's actually a specific sim that can be run. We basically allow the low jack, or we just make it a 3-handed sim, and we give the button a limping range, and we just define it. We node lock it. I think with the ace and the king, I can raise this. I would rather be suited to the ace or the king. This is substantially weaker without being suited that way, but just having an ace and a king is very good, and the 8 and the 7 are not nothing cards. now I flop pretty close to nothing. Yes, I have the, the nut flush draw blocker, and I have backdoor diamonds and a gutter. The gutter's to the underside of the straight. It might be, yeah, okay, I'll just fold. If that player checked, this might be a spot where I can just be like, all right, just give me the pot because you're not interested in it. Nobody has the ace-high flush draw. It's going to be hard for people to really contest it. Having said that, if I check that flop, it's hard for me to really have anything, so I don't have a super convincing story. I got pocket fours or something. Maybe aces could go check, and then after it checks through, and we get another check from the big blind, put a bet in. I don't know. Ace, king, and a 9. This is a raised blind versus blind. The pre-flop raiser has a substantial range advantage on this board because they have all the ace-ace. They probably also have more ace-king and maybe more king-king. I think blind versus blind, kings are going to 3-bet more than they would not blind versus blind, I guess is the way to put it. Like in any other situation, I guess. Except maybe small blind versus button. These are things that I would like to have firmer answers for, right? Like just like no, the range is cold, and I don't, and to some extent that's on me. I could have spent a lot more time looking at things in the matrix. Mostly I've been doing the kind of scattershot approach. The matrix being Upswing Poker's PLO matrix. Link in the description below. If you're on YouTube, if you're on Twitch, there's no link yet, but there will be. I gotta clean up my Twitch page and make it all shiny. But yeah, here, what do we got? We got nothing that interesting. Yeah, but so I've been kind of taking the approach where I play a lot of hands and I look them up and I kind of try to sort of almost like Monte Carlo my way to understanding the strategy. But I think there's other ways of using the tool where I ask hypotheticals like, okay, if I have ace, king, queen on the button, can I always open? And actually, I guess the answer is like, if I have ace, king on the button, can I just always open that? And the answer is yes, unless I have ace, king, deuce, 3, double suited. Or double suited. Rainbow. Double suited, I can definitely raise. And then, questions like when I raise with double suited hands, do I fold any of them, right? Like, are there folds in particular spots? And I think there are some spots where there's folds, but a lot of them, we lean towards calling or even 4-betting. This is garbage. This is what one might call double suited trash, right? We certainly don't call all our double suited hands all the time. But when they're good enough to open, they're often good enough to call a 3-bet. Largely because they often play very well against 3-betting ranges, right? Both in terms of having good equity and in terms of having good post-flop playability. So the low jack opens over here, and then there's a raise, and we're going to fold this hand against that. But we can look at their stats, and we can see they've only played 20% of their hand so far. A little bit more because now it's, we're adding 1. So it was 3 of 15. Now it's 4 of 16. So it'll be 25%. Ooh, math. But that's pretty low, right? That's about the same as we're playing. In fact, we have played 4 of 15. It'll be 4 of 16. And it'll be 25%. So it's exactly the same percentage of hands. So even though they're open limping, we maybe don't want to. And this is interesting. This is a, min 3-bet multi-way on button versus shorty PFR. Yeah, so that might have been a very deliberate sort of attempt to elicit a 4-bet jam where, wow, this player just said, I don't care. Yeah, I'll put all the money in. Now they're just going to jam everything, right? And what do they call it? They have 10s? Yeah, aces. Okay. I hate to say I'm rooting for an 8 on the river, but like I'm kind of rooting for an 8 on the river. That was an interesting way to play the aces. They were bad aces, to be sure. If we they had 39% pre-flop, and this stuff had 35%. So heads up, it was probably a little different. So they probably got the rest of the money in a little more good. than the multi-way. Because multi-way, often when you have aces, everybody else against you is taking away part of your equity. Like, you have a big like, you can think like, this is a little too loose. I have all the equity, and then I'm going to give you some for the times you outdraw me, you some for the times you outdraw me, you some. But if you were heads up against any one of those hands, you would only lose that piece of equity to them. So now here we have a limper on the button. And so aces generally play a lot better heads up than they do multi-way. And so that player, while they were trying to get heads up, I think, with bad aces like that, this would have been an okay flop for our hand. Although not the nuts. They then put in a whole bunch more, and they got called by, you know, I don't even know whether that other player should maybe call, actually, with the way they'd already put in. No, they'd only put in 8. Yeah, they probably could have gotten away. You get a lot of tricky spots where once you start calling bets pre-flop in PLO, it can be hard. It's not quite like no limit where you can get away from your hand pretty often, because you often have like a lot of equity, and this is not really what we've got. If nobody has anything, I can potentially turn my hand into a bluff here because I'm 4 ways. Yeah, I'm out of position, but I can make a convincing story that I have a 6 and checked it on the flop, or I have a 3 and checked it on the flop. You know, I'm going to have all of the junky combinations that are going to hit those cards. Unfortunately, I think my opponents are going to have some of those junky combinations too. I think we had 1 or 2 posters in this hand, and only one person voluntarily put money in the pot. Which, when there's big cards on flop, you know, in general, that's going to mean that their ranges are stronger. But when the board is, you know, rags like that, it might actually help them to have involuntarily put money in the pot. All right, we have a min raise from what is the hijack, because we have a player sitting out. All right, now we get a full-size raise, 3-bet from the person on the right, who, you know, looks like a serious player, right? 21-21. I think their 3-bet with ace-ace was very interesting. I mean, not the fact that they 3-bet. Oh, I'm gonna do a thing. I'm gonna move this. Yeah, because this has been messing up my thumbnails for YouTube. ZenMadman Poker on YouTube. Give a subscription or subscribe or whatever. It's very helpful. I'm let's see, save layout. Okay. Yeah, because like I erased the HUD because it looks stupid in thumbnails. I mean, in some it might look cool, but mostly I want to keep the attention on, you know, the cards on the board. And yeah, trying to very gently grow a YouTube channel. I think I'm up to 13 subscribers now. Yay. And you know, basically it's just the stream. I'm just exporting the stream and kind of cutting off the little bits at the beginning, the transition, and at the end. That's just for you here on Twitch. Oh, but if you're on YouTube, go to Twitch, twitch.tv/ZenMadman. Link in the description below. And give a follow there. Or a subscription. You can subscribe with Amazon Prime. It's free. Let's see. I like this hand. If it folds to me. If there's a raise in front of me, this might be a decent cold calling hand. I think it is. It also might be a decent 3-betting hand because I have an ace. I have these kind of loose passive players behind me. My playability is going to be pretty good because the 7 and the 6 connect. The 7, if I flop a set, I can play pretty confidently. And I have a nut flush draw. So there are certain types of marginal hands that I really wouldn't want to be cold calling and maybe getting in this multi-way position with the pre-flop raiser on my direct right. I have very poor relative position here, right? They're going to c-bet a lot of flops, and then I'm going to have to decide what to do before the other players do. That's a little less of a factor in PLO, I think. That's my feeling, because I just said they're going to c-bet a lot of flops, but they shouldn't c-bet that many flops. There's a lot more checking by the pre-flop raiser in Pot Limit Omaha, I believe. And here, if we didn't have the flush on board, I would consider using this hand as a bluff, because I'm double blocking both straights, right? Which is fantastic. But with three spades on board, it's hard to, you know, I don't have any blockers to the spades. I did turn a straight. That's great. And if this 8 again were like a heart or something, I would certainly continue here. Even though I don't have the nut straight, I'm double blocking the nut straight. So I would be pretty happy in this spot. Unfortunately, you know, there were three spades on the flop, and my opponent's check doesn't really tell us that much. Ace, king, queen, 10 with a suit to the queen, which is like the worst version of this hand single suited, but it's also still a good hand, right? I've got a bunch of high cards, almost all the high cards. There are going to be a lot of flops that I'm going to really smash and have very good playability on. That's kind of one of them. There is a flush draw out there. You know, I have a gut shot to the nuts. I have 4 double pair cards to not quite the nuts, but something that feels nutty-ish. I'm going to go ahead and bet. Somebody can have pocket sixes, and I'm just behind them. But that's not super common, right? The 4 is basically a brick. They check called. I don't think they have me beat here almost ever. They can still have 6-6. They can still have a 10. How much would I want to bet here, though? I'm going to go 3/4 pot. Does that make sense? Then they'll have 70. Would we be able to jam river? Almost. Not quite. I should probably maybe pot it here. I'm not sure. These kind of 2 pair hands are a little awkward. And if they jam, it's pretty unpleasant, actually. Okay, I think 5-3 is not a big part of their range. It's possible, but it's not very likely. 6-6 is possible. What can I get value from here? Do I know anything about this player? Am I seeing monsters under the bed in terms of thinking that 6-6 is going to be a big part of their calling range there on the turn? Okay, I'm unblocking spades. That's kind of irrelevant. Not really. I mean, basically, I guess I want calls from like a king and, I don't know. Not knowing anything about this player, I'm gonna check this back. I kind of hate it though. It feels so cowardly. Yeah, so that's obviously not a hand I'm getting any calls from. It was hard to come up with hands that I really wanted to get calls from. I will mark that, and any other players in the chat, feel free to say, oh, such obvious value you missed on the river, or, oh, you know, very sensible check back, whatever, or any questions or thoughts that make you think one or the other. You know, value betting 2 pair in PLO, like 3 streets, I think it's hard to get 3 streets with 2 pair, but I did have top 2. Flush draws missed. One nice thing is like I can kind of represent like I have a busted draw because so many draws missed. So for that reason, I kind of like betting there. If the 5, no, what was the river? Like a deuce, right? That was maybe the best. Well, now it's too late to see. I mean, I can see it, but that was maybe the best river to get a call down on. Except like a king or a 10 or a jack where I made the nuts and then they make a smaller straight or something. I think I was a little too concerned about a hand like 6-6 that on a turn like that they just jam it. I think I can get value there. We'll review it. With the deuce, this is a fold. Deuce just isn't a good card. We need really good other things in our hand. And I'm going to be out of position. Again, worst relative position. This is this is a friend of the game. Okay. And also I didn't have any real reads on my opponent. Against the field, I don't know. All right, I'll try to stop talking about that hand and come back to it towards the end. All right, ace, queen. What the? Oh, yeah, flush draw versus trips. You know, the flush draw only had 30% equity there because so many of the hearts give the other person a boat, right? So they've, on a paired board, a flush draw is really, yeah, sorry. On a paired board, a flush draw is really much lower utility. It's something to add value to a hand. It's not very good as a primary feature of a hand. Panda says, we aren't seeing the HUD for player 5. Is it on your screen that is out of the square for the stream? Oh, it was their first hand. Never mind. Yeah, it was, and that was the thing about that hand. That was their first hand, and you know, I got into a big pot with them, and so I had no read. But that's not strictly true, right? My read on this player should be an average of all the players I've played against on Ignition, right? Like, this player is a random in this player pool. They're not a random from anywhere, right? They're playing here on this site. And so the distribution of players I've played against, that represents my model for this player. Now, they've actually folded some hands pre-flop. So I know that they're not like this player. They're not player 4, right? They're not rocking a 92 VPIP. They folded 3 hands now, right? Because they folded 2 and then this one. So they're definitely not that player. Reasonable chance that they're a reasonable player. Except, what did they have that other hand? This is not to belabor that hand. They had Queen Jack 8 deuce that they called in the big blind with, and then check call the open-ended straight draw with nothing. Well, backdoor flush draw, and then check call the turn. I understand, third nut flush draw, but still kind of blocking their own outs. Yeah, so that's a read, right? So that's a more concrete read. It's like, yeah, they'll call with some kind of junky hands in the big blinds to take a flop multi-way. So that's a read. And I'm going to fold my King Jack single suited. 7 and the 4, not very good cards to go with the Jack and a King. I mean, the 7 can make a straight with the Jack and with the 4. Why am I just like thinking of Canada right now? Like, I really feel like this overwhelming urge to be in Montreal right now. I know, because it's hot here. Wearing a sweatshirt would be less inappropriate in Montreal. Although the last time I was in Montreal in June, it got up to like 90, which is like, what is that, the 30s? It's like the low 30s. Maybe even like 34 or 35. Maybe even like 95 there. So that was surprising to me. I was like, oh, it gets warm here. But, you know, East Coast, right? Like, the East Coast gets hot. Ace 7 with spades. So this looks good. Lots of good ways to flop here, right? Like, we can flop an ace, we can flop a 7, we can flop spades. If we flop spades with the nut flush draw, or with the pair of aces, like, that's often a board we're going to bet. If we bet flop either set, we'll probably bet those. And maybe if there's some kind of straight type thing and we're like double blocking it with the 7s, then we can get a little wild with it. Queen Jack 6-3, double suited. This would be kind of the double suited trash. You know, the Queen and the Jack connect and the Jack and the 3 connect. Yeah, so this over here, player 3, you know, they're implementing a limping strategy, even though they're playing pretty reasonable stats, right? So they could be just kind of a decent player who just, you know, doesn't play by the rules, right? Like, you know, the secret that people don't want to tell you is, like, you can open limp in a lot of poker games and be a winning player. It's a thing, right? And in fact, there's probably spots where limping is best. But it kind of doesn't fit with the paradigm. And there's some very strong arguments against doing it in general. And I think these get generalized to never, ever, ever doing it. But, you know, it depends. I'm not saying go out and do it. I'm just saying, when we see someone doing it, we shouldn't immediately go, you know, that's a terrible player. Like, I'm going to take all their money. Like, no, not necessarily. Like, it's an indicator that they're less likely to be, you know, using certain study materials. And in this high rake environment, it seems like a very bad thing to do. But there's a lot to say about it, actually, you know? So it's just something to keep in mind. You know, don't judge people too much on one thing, even when that thing seems like oh, I don't think that thing's good. It's like, maybe it's not as bad as you think it is. Having said that, you know, there's still a pretty good chance that they're not the... All right, so they're betting 666, and they had the straight. And the other person had just like a 9 with queens. So, you know, I'm talking about limping, and I mean, they have queens, which I get sort of what you're going for there, but the 4 is just a bad card, and I think it's probably just better to fold that. And now we look at this player's stats over like 13 hands. Now it's 38-15, which is like, oh, okay. Okay, maybe maybe they are, you know, on the sort of looser side. But this player on the right, oh no, my note was that weird min 3-bet multi-way. Like, you can be like, oh, you shouldn't min 3-bet. That's so silly. That's like, you just never do that. Oh, it's just pot. But they were against a player who was very likely to shove over the top of it. And if they had potted it, then the other person's raise would not have it wouldn't have been a raise. They would have just been going all in with insufficient funds to complete a full raise, and then this player couldn't have jammed it pre. Battery sufficiently charged already? It says 83%. I don't know. What are you doing, Apple? Oh, maybe they've got like some weird... Does anybody know what a yellow battery means? Like when your battery thing turns yellow on an iPhone? I don't know. This is my first iPhone. I got it because it was free or cheap or something, but don't buy a lot of Apple products or any. I got a free MacBook with full tilt. That was nice back when full tilt would just give you stuff. Give me a 42-inch TV, a free MacBook, and like an iPad. What was that thing? The iPod. It was like an iPad or an iPhone, but it wasn't a phone, basically. I forget what it was called. I fold these queens. The 6 and the 3 are just terrible side cards, and we have no suit. But yeah, they would just give you stuff. Like, I got a lot of stuff. I mean, on Stars, I got like, you know, 10 figs of rakeback every year. I could have gotten 100 if I'd actually gone through with getting Supernova Elite. But I decided not to sacrifice my health in December of 2010. And I was like, you know what? I'm just going to have like a normal poker month after playing 100,000 hands in 10 days of limit hold'em. 100,000 hands of no limit hold'em is much less taxing than 100,000 hands of limit hold'em. Because limit hold'em, you're just not all in. You're not like you don't have these all in spots where you're just like, oh, it's, you know, you see so many more flops and turns and rivers. I do not recommend. That was not really a good expenditure of time. I've done some silly challenges. I think this challenge that I'm doing right now is substantially less silly than a lot of the ones that I've done in the past. Because, first of all, I'm not telling anyone what the challenge is. So I'm making sure that I'm not like over-promising and under-delivering. I have an idea of what I'm doing. But mostly it's less of a challenge and more of I'm trying to establish some positive habits. And the positive habit is every morning, wake up, do the things I need to do to feel good, which right now is like a little bit of exercise, a little bit of meditation, like 5 minutes, and drinking a smoothie. And the smoothie gives me power to get through the morning without like eating a bunch, and it doesn't slow me down. This is garbage. And you know, and then I just come and I do my stream every morning. And that's really helped in terms of building, you know, a small following, which, you know, I appreciate every one of you, you know, being here and watching the stream and hopefully getting some combination of entertainment and or education out of the experience. And, you know, then I'm exporting them to YouTube and learning to do a little bit more with YouTube. Like yesterday I had to actually use, I used Adobe Premiere to stitch the video together because the video I did that's coming out tomorrow actually is when I had a blackout in the middle of the session and the session ended abruptly and I got back on and I was like, oh, I'm live streaming from my phone. But then I did a session review separately off stream and then I stitched them together, and I like learning new skills, you know. It takes time. And I'm trying to learn to do better thumbnails and write descriptions and you know, clickbaity titles. which I guess today I did the opposite. Episode number 31 of PLO of ZenMadman. I didn't even write the whole thing, but yeah, it just I think just getting this habit of every day playing a session of one tabling, mostly focusing, and when I'm in a hand, definitely focusing, and then doing a little session review. It's like non-zero action every day, right? And then most days I play a bunch more. Most days I study more. I want to study a bunch more, and I need to build out my schedule a little better to accommodate that, I think. But I do more studying, but ow, I just kicked the underside of my table. This is garbage. Let's see. We have some comments. PPI Posse says it means you're in low power mode. Oh, okay. Thank you. Thank you. I assume that's about the phone. Today I do feel like I am a little bit in low power mode. I'm a little lower energy than some other days. I did stay up late. I watched Loki, and I ate after midnight. I had a bacon cheeseburger, which is veggie bacon. This really good veggie bacon from a place, Leona Veg in Oakland. This is not an ad, but I strongly support their business and their product. There's some other brand name associated with the actual bacon itself, but it's really good. And having never actually had like a bacon cheeseburger of the regular variety, I'm like, oh, this is really good. So, and then a most excellent pickle. That sounds like a British a British mystery. A most excellent pickle you've got here. Yes, I say. Okay. PPI Posse also says your iPhone battery is yellow because low power mode is turned on. To change it back to normal, go to settings, battery, and tap the switch next to low power mode. Cool. Thank you. Thank you for teaching me how to use my device that I never bothered to learn properly. The chat is full of helpful things. I'm gonna sit out soon, actually, and we will do a session review. And I think, okay, I said I was gonna focus really during hands, right? I have top two pair. I have a gut shot. I have no blockers to clubs. I have no blocker to the bottom straight. This feels like a pretty decent flop for my range, but also really good flop for cold colors ranges, as king king, queen queen, 10-10. A lot of suited things are all going to be in their ranges, rundowns that are going to make a straight. The 7 of clubs is a fairly poor turn card, and I'm going to keep on checking and hopefully get one more free card, which is again quite a poor river card now. My top two pair has been downgraded in, I can't beat trips, I can't beat a straight, I can't beat a flush, and I can't beat aces anymore, but I don't think anybody else has aces. I'm going to check, and I think there's a reasonable chance I win this if this player checks. They might check a 10. I think a 10 gets checked here a fair amount of the time. If I had a club, I may have ended up betting the flop, and make this like a queen of clubs, or, I wouldn't have the ace of clubs because I wouldn't have had the nut, whatever. But, I already listed all the things I can't beat. It's a little bit like, well, what are you betting now? I think a hand like queen 10, king 10, queen whatever, 7, 7, 7, maybe. These sort of things make sense. They didn't put any money in on any street before now. But, they could also just bet like a naked 10 and think they're bluffing against a straight. I don't know. My hand might have made an interesting bluff because I was blocking a lot of boats, right? Try to get straight, try to get, trips to fold, maybe even get flush to fold. I think that could have been an interesting bluff. I'll mark that hand briefly, and we'll kick off the session review. Or should I play one more orbit? I could play one more orbit. I'm going to do the session. How much? I only marked 2 hands? 3 hands? Okay. All right. We'll do another orbit. Today, I have not marked a lot of hands. I have a feeling that a lot of that is because I didn't have that many interesting spots. I did have a 2-pair hand that I thought about getting value from. Then I had a 2-pair hand that I thought about turning into a bluff, which just kind of shows how much context matters. I actually really enjoy that concept as like a sort of angle on a session review. But we'll rock another orbit. maybe get some interesting situations. Okay, is ace king gonna take it down? It is. I mean, it hit a second pair, but it didn't need it. All right. Ace king 10 with a suited deuce to the ace. That's nice. I think I can call, potentially even 3-bet a hand like this. I probably would prefer to be double suited. The deuce isn't really fantastic. Oh, this pal left here. Now, this might be an interesting spot to develop a leading range. It's such a straight board, and, you know, if I had a blocker to the straight, I think I might go ahead and do that. As it is, I have a nut flush draw, which is lovely, and now I have a blocker to the new nut straight, and I am going to go ahead and bet. What sort of bet sizing would I use here? I think pot makes some sense. Lemonardi 22 says, "You are my idol." Thanks. Not sure if serious. I mean, assuming probably not, but, you know, idols get followed. So, you know, that's how, you know, things work, I think. All right, so this looks like a very good 3-betting hand. Ace, king, jack 9, double suited. One more orbit. You're welcome. Love your game and the approach of the game. Oh, well, thanks. Thank you. I actually really appreciate that. On Twitch, not always sure if someone's trolling. There's a lot of trolling. So when you know, when someone's that complimentary, you know, it's hard to know. But yeah, I really appreciate that. You know, I try to approach the game in a sort of just like a, I don't know, kind of as it is, and try to really accept how much I don't know about it, but also accept that that doesn't mean I know nothing, and understand that in a lot of games I do understand the game more than my opponents, even if there's just tons of stuff I don't know. These hands, I think they're very related, but they're very different. As in, I fought top 2 in both hands, and they couldn't be that much more different. I raise, not much to say there. In terms of like how I respond to a 3-bet, I think I generally would call with this. I'm not gonna delve too deeply into that. I get flatted by the button, flatted by the small blind, and the big blind folds. So top 2 pair on a board like this is a hand where you, I think, really want something else, right? If we think about in terms of nuttiness, ace jack is the nuts, jack 9 is the second nut, set of king is the third nut, set of queens is the fourth nuts, set of kings is the fifth nuts. We have the 6th nuts with king queen, right? So the 6th nuts, and thinking about our opponents and what hands they're likely to play, like, are they likely to play ace jack type hands? Yeah, they're gonna play some ace jack hands. Are they gonna play jack 9? Yeah, they cold call to raise. They're gonna call with a lot of rundowns. They're gonna have jack 9 in them. Are they gonna have king king or queen queen or 10-10? Yes. I am blocking king king. I'm blocking queen queen. They might 3-bet kings a fair amount of the time, so we're gonna discount that a little. But 10-10, very reasonable cold calling hand, especially from, you know, like an 85-37. Like, I don't think they're gonna fold 10-10 much at all. And I don't think they're going to 3-bet it too much. They have 0 3-bets in 28 hands. So I think they're going to have a lot of bottom set. They're going to have some of the top 2 sets, and they're going to have plenty of straights. And I'm only blocking the nut straight and the top 2 sets, right? So it's very easy to be beaten on this board with top 2 pair. Secondly, if I start building a pot now, not only do I not have a very nutty hand, but I don't have a lot of outs to the nuts. I do have 4 cards that give me, you know, top boat or second boat, which is nice. And I have 3 jacks that give me the nut straight. So I have some good turn cards, right? But I'm not blocking any clubs, and I don't have a jack. I'd really like a jack. Like, if I had king, queen, jack, jack, maybe then I start betting this, right? Especially if I have like a jack of clubs or a queen of clubs. All of a sudden, then I have a lot more equity, but I'm also blocking a lot more. So I think that this is a clear spot where it's like I have top 2 pair, but it's not that strong on a board like this against my opponent's ranges, right? You know, my stack to pot ratio against the small blind is quite low. It's 3. So against that exact player, I'm not super concerned about, you know, having playability on future streets. Against the button, though, it's like 12 or so, and that's going to be unpleasant to play this like out of position if I start building a pot. So I check, they check, and I could just bink the nuts, right? And I don't. Liminardi says, I like that approach. I assume to the kind of trying to find a balance between, you know, sort of being humble about what we know, but also not feeling like we don't know things. Here, I know that all of a sudden there are a lot of flushes that people can have. Sure, they might bet a flush draw on the flop sometimes, but they're going to check a lot of flush draws, particularly the out of position player. They check now. They can make some flushes and check those, right? They can have 5 high, you know, queen high, 9 high flushes and check those. They could even trap with an ace high flush, possibly. They can still have all these straights, and that's not really like the player I'm trying to get to fold straights. If I did have the ace of clubs, I would consider using that as sort of a blocker bet here. But again, I have top 2 pairs, so I have this showdown value. I have some good river cards that I can now hit. I don't really see a lot of utility in just trying to blast someone out of the pot. I'm just like, maybe let's make a boat. Maybe let's pair the board and make a boat. Oh, we paired the board, but we didn't make a boat. Okay, so now, if we just want to think about all the things we lose to, a 10, a straight, a flush, a boat, and pocket aces. Right, pocket aces, I think we like don't have to worry about too much. We have an ace, and our opponents didn't 3-bet pre. It's possible, but it's not very likely. But like, let's think this player checks, and now the action's on us. I'm not saying we should use this hand as a bluff, but let's think about what hands we do want to bluff with here, right? It would be nice to have the ace of clubs because we'd be blocking flushes, nut flushes. Having a 10 would be nice, although at that point it feels like, well, now we're definitely targeting straights and better, right? But having a 10 would block a lot of boats, and having jacks would still block straights. Straights are maybe one of the hands that we want to get to fold if we're trying to bet, you know, king queen. 10x is maybe a hand we're trying to get to fold if we want to bet king queen. We want to block a king, you know, king 10. We have a queen, we want to block queen 10, right? So I think this is a pretty good bluffing candidate. I'm not saying that I made a mistake by checking. I do have some showdown value, and I'm not blocking clubs and I'm not blocking the straight, but I think blocking the boats, like if I just potted it here, it would be hard for my opponents to call with like a straight 10. With a straight, I think they're actually supposed to call with a 10 more than a straight because the 10's blocking boats. I'm not sure though. But so they bet half pot, and I end up folding. And, you know, as a bluff catcher, we can consider the merits here too. You know, it's in terms of like, I'm blocking boats, right? Which if my opponent bet bigger, I would actually think they're more like boat or nothing, and so blocking boats would be pretty good. But a player like this, maybe they finally decided to bet a flush. I don't know. Maybe they turned, you know, river to boat. Maybe they went runner. Hard to say. We have a comment in the chat, which I imagine is about this hand. Daniel says, in straight boards, it's useful to look at your hand and then think about the hands that are immediately above us and below us in terms of hierarchy. Yeah, so I'm not sure if that means like immediately above us, like a set of 10s, or in terms of like better pre-flop. But I do think in terms of just like the hierarchy, like there were 5 hands that beat us, and then and the one directly below us was like 10-10, which, you know, if we can boat over both them, that would be great. Like if the river were a queen or a king, and then they had 10-10 or something, that would be fantastic. But you know, what can I get value from if I were trying to bet that flop? That, you know, I don't know, like well, draws basically, but the draws are often going to have really good equity. So I ended up folding here, and I feel pretty comfortable with that hand. It feels like, you know, what are you going to do, right? You flop top 2, and sometimes you make a boat or hit a gut shot, and sometimes it just doesn't work out, and that's fine. And then this hand, actually, I'm have more questions about in terms of kind of how I played it. You know, pre-flop, not really much to say, right? Very nice hand for the hijack. And I get a 4-way flop, which is then king 10-6, which is pretty wet. There are wraps galore, right? There are spades. But I have top two pair, and 6-6 is kind of the only hand I'm particularly concerned about because King King 10-10 are possible, but I'm blocking both of those sets, so they're unlikely. And it seems like not there's a really good chance my hand is good. There's a pretty good chance that the turn is going to be fairly poor, and as such, I kind of like narrowing the field, maybe getting people to fold like a 5 high flush draw, right? Folding out some equity. Some of the weaker wraps maybe can fold here. So it checks to me. I bet half pot. Very unconfident in terms of my multi-way single raise pot bet sizing. That's something that I want to study up on and look into. And if anybody in the chat has any comments on that or thoughts about that, super open to that. I know that there's definitely better players than me here in the chat, and I appreciate that. And I know that there's weaker players as well we all kind of share ideas, and I want everybody to feel welcome regardless of level of expertise, sharing their thoughts. So I bet half pot, which doesn't look like half pot because it's easy to forget how much rake is taken out of this pot, which is 70 cents, full 5%, taken every 20 cents. And they call. So first thing I want to do is put them on some sort of range. I do think like 6-6 is possible. 10-10 is maybe possible. King seems very unlikely. And, some kind of two pair hand also possible. King 10, 10-6, maybe 10-6 with a gutter, maybe even King 6 with, Queen Jack or whatever. And spades are also possible, and maybe some backdoor hearts. So they call the turns of 4, which feels like a very good card, right? It doesn't improve my hand. I had 7 outs that were gonna give me the nuts or second nuts, but it's basically a brick. It adds more draws, more kind of under wrap, but that seems unlikely. But also hearts. I have the nut heart blocker, which I kind of like here. And when they check it to me, I decide to bet 3/4. I feel like this was I don't like my bet sizing here. It's maybe fine, but it's if I had King, what would I do? I would pot it. If I had a big draw that I really wanted to maximize fold equity, I'd pot it. So this to me is like a bet sizing tell. I feel like I did this specifically because I had my specific hand, and I don't like that at all. I think that's bad. On a site where it's hard for them to really get the info to exploit me, but this also doesn't even let me get stacks in on the river should I bink the nuts. So I think the bet size kind of just doesn't really make sense to me. And so I don't love it, right? But I do like a bet here. I think it makes sense. I like having the blocker to the backdoor nut flush draw because I think that's maybe the sort of thing somebody could get tricky and check raise, and then I've got a bit of a headache. Once they check call, I think I should have ruled out 6-6 or 10-10 for the most part because this is so wet that I feel like most players are going to check raise all in on a board like this. If they've slow played it to the turn, I think they're just going to rip it here. I don't know. I could be wrong. That could be a wrong assumption. But thinking that now, I think I should have thought that then, and then when this turn card comes and they check, I think I should probably bet here. And, I didn't. And I don't really like it. I feel like, okay, there's all these withdraws that my opponent can have, and that doesn't really help me because if I go for a value bet, they're not really going to call with a purely withdraw, right? But if I were to jam here or bet, as much as I can, which is 66.22, I can have a lot of withdraws in my range as well, right? I have this ace of hearts. I could have had another heart with it, and I could have had ace queen jack with hearts or something like that, and I could have put that bet out there, and so they can call down. Say they have king queen jack 9 or ace king queen jack, maybe they can hero there, right? So I think this is a spot to try and get a hero call, and I checked, and I feel like in this spot 2 pair is so much more powerful because of the play of the hand, because of the texture of the board, because everything missed, except a weird 3-5, right? Which just okay, if you have it, you have that. But I think I missed value here. I think I missed what looks like thin value in some spots, I think actually was pretty decent value, and there was a really good chance that I could get hero called. I was having a hard time thinking about what they're going to call me with, like what, king 6, I guess, but like maybe king deuce, maybe they have king queen jack deuce with suits, you know. I think a hand like that could have called. So I feel like I missed it here. We've got a bunch of chat that I want to look at now, and then maybe there will be some more comments on this hand. It's all from Daniel, who says, for instance, on king 10-9 rainbow, so queen jack would be the straight, king 10-9 rainbow, look at the equities. Ah, yes. If you have, for instance, king king deuce deuce and 9-9 deuce deuce against 10-10 6-5, with king king deuce deuce we have 93%, but 9-9 deuce deuce we have 5%. Right. So basically top set and nothing compared to bottom set and nothing. How do those do against the hands directly better or directly worse, right? So 10-10 has 9-9 totally dominated. So 9-9 when it gets it in bad, and particularly when it gets it in bad to something just slightly ahead of it, is just like torched, right? Whereas top set can actually be torching some of the opponent's hands. So that makes a lot of sense. Or like, what are some other king king deuce deuce with we have 79% against king queen 10-5 with 2 backdoor flush draws. Wow. So even when the king queen has 2 backdoor flush draws, yeah. So like somebody can be like, oh, I got top 2 and or is that a gut shot? That's a gut shot on that board. But like I have top pair, a gut shot, 2 backdoor flush draws. Let's go. But it's like somebody else is like, no, I've got top set. And it's like, oh, okay, well, yeah. And then what's the last thing? But with 9-9 deuce deuce against king queen 10-5, we have only 60%. Yeah, which is like, well, that's great to have 60%, but we're not crushing this other hand the same way, right? And so overall, since we're already giving up so much against 10-10 or king king, we really need to be crushing some hands, and it's harder for 9-9 for like bottom set on a straight board to crush. That's very useful. Thank you very much for putting all that in the chat, Daniel. We've got some very good players in the chat from time to time, not every day, but you know, we can all learn from each other, or like we can all learn from some of each other anyway. But I don't know, personally, like I've done a fair amount of teaching beginners or teaching like, you know, sort of early intermediate students at a lot of things, right? I used to teach Taekwondo. I used to teach yoga. I've taught music, blah, 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 blah. And I think teaching someone else is a great way to learn ourselves, right? So just trying to express our thoughts and communicate them to someone else, sometimes it forces us to see the spots where maybe there's an area that's a little cloudy. It forces us to kind of codify our knowledge into something we can express effectively. And that's really powerful. And I think it's a great way for us to learn, you know, even more than just trying to study on our own and just try to learn from teachers, right? Like learning from teachers, awesome. Learning from sort of people at a similar level, maybe who are a little bit ahead of us, also awesome. But teaching and trying to explain concepts, and I think it's so important to always be honest with like what we don't know. Even when you're an expert or like a master at something, there's still a level of like, well, you know, maybe we're still not sure about this because like we haven't put all the work in to like, you know, scientists don't know everything about the fields they study. That's what it means to study a field, right? And so I think everybody in poker is still studying poker. There's new tools coming out all the time where we can understand better, more and more and more. And, you know, the players at the top of the game aren't players who just learned everything and now they're just chilling. The only way they stay at the top of the game is by studying and studying and studying and continually trying to elevate their level of understanding and go deeper and deeper, and sometimes broader and broader, right? So let's see. So and then Daniel says, what I am trying to say is that we want to avoid the way behind scenario. Yeah, right. Like we want to avoid those like way behind, slightly ahead, right? I think is my understanding, where, you know, if we're ahead, we're not ahead that much because they've got a bunch of equity, and if we're behind, we're just like destroyed. So those are pretty bad spots. We want to be on the other end of that. And then exactly, you're welcome. Thank you. I already said thank you, and that's what the you're welcome was. So yeah, this hand, again, I don't think I have that much to write about it, but I think I expressed my thought process on it, and we'll we'll continue with the chat. Liminardi says, yes, Daniel, I agree with you 100%. Very nice comment. Looks like you know about this game and its puzzle. Yes, confirmed. That is my understanding of Daniel's understanding of the game. All right, so this was just a fold, and I just wanted to look this up and say, like, is this too nitty? This might be too nitty. Wait, did I fold this on the button? I thought this was a cutoff. I feel like I should open this on the button. I think this is wrong. Is this wrong? 9-9 single suited. I think during the game I maybe thought it was... Yeah, this is just too tight. It's just too tight. That's it. Suited to the 9, you know, with a king and an 8. It's just a raise. So 9-9 king 8 single suited is RFI call from button. So, you know, every day just trying to get a little bit better, and today I think with the help of the chat, I think I've improved my understanding of like how to play straight boards and avoiding those slightly ahead, way behind spots, and then also just touched up a little pre-flop spot, right? I mean, this is just a spot where it's like, yeah, that's not right. That wasn't a fold. I think in this hand I thought I was a cutoff, so you know, mistake regardless. But I actually want to look up this hand in the cutoff. I think is a fold. Okay, good. So might have thought I was cut off in this hand. Not sure why, but 9-9 king 8 single suited. Good suit is full. Good suit is RFI. Bad suit is fold. So this hand does get folded in the cutoff, this exact hand, but the suited to the king would be raised in the cutoff, and I think I would do that. I think I thought I was folding the cutoff, and I have no idea why. But yeah, I folded. That's too tight, and you know, sometimes I'm in it on purpose, sometimes I'm in it by accident. That'll be it for the stream today in terms of yeah, we're not really running through this hand. If you're on YouTube, go ahead, like and subscribe. If you're on Twitch, you can check out the YouTube. It's ZenMadman Poker. I'm still building it out. And anyway, I appreciate all of you watching, taking the time out of your day. And yeah, always happy to have you here and have interaction. You know, I mean, today I think we had a lot of good stuff in the chat from everybody. And you know, thank you all so much. So I will wish you a good day, and see you next time.